Now the latest ITV News from Granada reports with Tony Morris and Lucy Meacock.
Good evening. Correction. Fantastic evening and a very warm welcome to Granada Reports on a rather pleasant afternoon.
Yes, as the great man said, a very warm welcome to Granada Reports.
Hello, on a special programme this evening.
Why should we still be talking about Tony in 2017? Because he's all around us. His legacy is all around us in Manchester.
He was a decent, genuine bloke. Did you see me getting all choked up then?
10 years on, how Tony Wilson put Manchester on the map and changed the region he loved.
He was known as Mr. Manchester, but Tony was an advocate for our whole region. We'll look at his impact on the North West.
And we have a moving tribute from the poet Mike Gary.
Also on the programme this evening, Gary Carter was left with life-threatening injuries after an unprovoked attack outside a pub. Now back at work, he thanks those who saved his life.
And a new season in the Premier League and a new training ground. We're with Burnley ahead of the big kick-off. He was Mr. Manchester, but as Mr. Granada, he championed all of the North West. And now, 10 years after his death, tributes are being paid to Tony Wilson. The fact he's been trending on social media all over the region today is a sign of how much respect people still have for him.
Yeah, it was he who came up with that great saying, "This is Manchester, we do things differently here." And when it came to music and broadcasting, he made sure of that. He brought us Joy Division, New Order, the Happy Mondays. He brought Madonna to the Hacienda. And so the name Manchester was born.
But his influence went way beyond that, as we'll be finding out tonight. Let's start with the music, though. Our reporter Tim Scott has been hearing about Tony Wilson, the cultural catalyst.
Yes, here we are at the site of the Hacienda once more, and perhaps you'd be forgiven for thinking, oh no, not again. But the reason we're still talking about this place and Factory Records and the bands that made it happen is the fact they really did matter. Their legacy is still all around us today, in music, in fashion, in the ways our cities are changing, and much of it is down to the work and vision of one man. That man is Tony Wilson.
Why should we still be talking about Tony in 2017? Because he's all around us. His legacy is all around us in Manchester.
He went round this world and made all the people all over it, in every continent, a friend of Manchester.
And he always appeared to be in awe of all the artists, he really did, and he was so kind and generous and passionate about us.
Well, the first time I actually ever met Tony, I had a plastic pint pot full of Body Eaton's bitter in my hand and I threw it at him, because I couldn't sort of like go over and speak to him.
After success with the likes of Joy Division and New Order, the Happy Mondays were the next big hit for Tony and Factory Records. Their music, their clothes and their attitude, a perfect mirror of those hedonistic times.
Tony brought me into this wonderful business of music and entertainment.
He was always interested in other people doing something. He never saw any barriers or any... Everything was possible.
And alongside the music, let's not forget the former yacht showroom on Whitworth Street that Tony helped turn into the most famous nightclub in the world.
The man opened the Hacienda to entertain Manchester for 17 years for little or no reward.
You didn't have to wear a pair of Farrah pants and a pair of shoes from Dulce's to get in.
Factory Records may have gone bust and the Hacienda closed down. By then, though, Tony Wilson had left his mark on our culture. But he died too soon, from cancer 10 years ago today, aged just 57.
You still miss him. He was one of those people that, you know, for him not to be here, he is really missed.
He was a decent, genuine bloke. Did you see me getting all choked up then? I don't do choked up, and that's, you know, but he was a great bloke, he was an honest bloke.
Well, Tony is also credited with helping Liverpool become capital of culture. He used to proudly talk of the North West as a place where the Industrial Revolution and the trade union movement began and where the computer was invented. It was the place, he said, where all the big decisions should be made.
He was also a devoted Manchester United fan, as he liked to tell us about rather a lot. And while he was signing and managing bands and running a record label and the Hacienda, somehow he also found time to fit in being a reporter and presenter on Granada television. And of course he had a style all of his own, as Adam McLean reports.
Since the first caveman first watched the first prehistoric bird fly and wing his way across the skies, man has wanted to get up there in the clouds. The fence, the barbed wire fence!
As with everything Tony Wilson did, on screen he did things differently.
It's one of those jokes that we don't like to make because we leave the bad puns to the man called Burns and the BBC.
It brings the memories back. It's typical Tony. He loved to have a go. He had a go at me many a time when I was his rival, when I was presenting North West Tonight and he and Lucy were doing Granada reports. He always liked to have a dig, usually at RTS award nights. I joined Granada to launch the new Granada reports. The presenters were Bob Greaves, myself and Brian Truman, and our young thrusting star reporter was this new lad called Tony Wilson, and he made such an impact.
That's a boom, and this is booms.
Do you think Tony would have been the mayor of Greater Manchester?
Without doubt. Fully confident he would have been the mayor of Manchester or the mayor of Greater Manchester. And we would have been so entertained and it would have been so much fun, but within 3 months we would have been all bankrupt and tried to get rid of it.
With viewers, Tony was never quite as popular in Liverpool as he was in Manchester.
Is it true, is it not true, on your programme about 3 or 4 years ago, what's the best thing to come out of Liverpool? The M62.
It's a joke. It was always very funny, though, Manchester-Liverpool thing, because contrary to public belief, Tony actually was very, very much, even in the early days, let alone the later days, when he got involved officially in the North West, was always a North Westerner.
Scousers cheering Manx, Manx cheering Scousers. What a great day. Have a great weekend. See you Monday.
So what would you do at home if you knew that the world was going to end in a few minutes? What would you do? I hate to think. If you only had a few minutes left.
I'd read poetry, Lucy.
Oh, no!
The man who loved the work of poets like Yeats inspired a poem of his own.
Talk to me of all these things, and there's one thing that's for certain. I'll see the face and I'll hear the voice of Anthony H. Wilson. I say it in the poem, he was the greatest youth worker I ever dreamed, and he was a youth worker for thousands upon thousands of young people in Manchester and throughout the world. Yeah, of course we had the cool kids who played table tennis and pool with us, but no one spoke to us about art, no one spoke to us about music, no one spoke to us about culture. Tony spoke to me about all those things, and I wasn't allowed to talk about those things in the world I grew up in Moss Side. We had to keep things like that quiet. So Tony was a conduit of information and ideas.
Tony's love for literature is reflected on his headstone at Southern Cemetery. It reads, "People drop out of the history of a life as of a land, though their work or their influence remains."
Well, that's it. It's my last day. It's been emotional. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.
And we'll have another tribute to him at the very end of the programme. Finally tonight, though, back to Tony Wilson. And to mark the 10th anniversary of his death, we have some special television moments and memories on our website.
Yeah, well worth checking out. You'll also find the poet Mike Gary there with a new version of his poem St Anthony, an ode to Anthony H. Wilson. Specially recorded for Granada Reports in St Mary's Church in Manchester, affectionately known as the Hidden Gem.
It was one of Tony's favourite places. It was an escape from modern life, somewhere calm where you could find peace. And it was the church that was chosen for his funeral. We're leaving the final word tonight to Mike Garry. Good night. Good night.
Talk to me of Albion, of Anderton and of Art, of the Arndale, Alan Turing, Acid House, Alexander Park, Beds the Buzzcocks, Bouncing Bombs, Beautiful Busby Babes, Curtis, Cancer Christie's, Catholicism, Crack and Kurt Cobain. Talk to me of all these things, and there's one thing that's for certain. I'll see the face and I'll hear the voice of Anthony H. Wilson.
Since the first caveman first watched the first prehistoric bird fly and wing his way across the skies, man has wanted to get up there in the clouds. Good evening and welcome to So It Goes, a or perhaps the new music show.
Oh, talk to me of Granada and Granada, and of Hockey, and of Hannah, and how the fighting just got harder.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ben, no, I'll speak now, Mr. Ben. You've done your talk. I'll speak now, Mr. Ben.
I want to hear it from the mouth of an honest northern blagger.
I know nothing. He said, I know nothing.
About rugby league. I know everything about everything else, Lucy.
Talk to me on the telly, then talk to me on the radio. Talk to me at the opening of some arty-farty show.
It's always nice to think that I wasted a career. I didn't, because working for Granada is wonderful and broadcasting to my region and this region is fantastic.
Say, Auntie, please come round. Because 10 years later, something is lost, still hasn't been found.